So my name is Valerie Taylor, and I am the president and CEO of CMD-IT, which is the Center for Minorities and People with Disabilities in IT. So CMD-IT, I think we're well recognized in terms of being the presenter of the Richard Tapia Celebration of Diversity in Computing Conference. We are also at the conference. We organize, in addition to organizing the conference, we also organize the Student Professional Development Workshop. And then we also do a great deal in terms of academic careers. In terms of those workshops for graduate students, we hold graduate webinars. And we are happy to have today our partner, and that's Jane Street. So woo woo to our partner. And as a partner, we try to work closely with Jane Street in terms of outreach to our community and do different activities, one of which is this webinar. So with that, I want to turn it over to Marina Zambrano. And so Marina leads the campus recruiting strategy for Jane Street. So we're excited to hear more about Jane Street and the different internship opportunities that are available and different work in that space. So I look forward to hearing about it. And what we'll do in terms of questions, so we're set up as a webinar. So what we can do is if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. And then what I'll do is unmute you. And so then that way we can allow you to ask your question. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marina. And I'm going off video and I'm going to pin Marina. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valerie, and thank you also to the rest of the CMD-IT team for having me here today. I'm very excited to be giving this webinar and talk a little bit more about Jane Street as a firm in general, as well as the different types of opportunities that we have here at the firm to learn more about us, learn more about the fintech space and everything in between. So in true Jane Street style, I don't have any sort of formal deck prepared. When we give these webinars and information sessions, we really try to keep things very casual and light and as informative as we can. And so I'm just going to walk through a brief kind of description of who Jane Street is, what it is exactly that we do, some of the things that makes the firm, at least I think, very special. In terms of just the way that we operate and the way that we approach things, and then leave a good chunk of time at the end for people to kind of chime in and ask questions. So I just wanted to start off first by welcoming all of you. Thank you so much for coming to learn a little bit more about us. So as Valerie mentioned, my name is Marina, and I am on the campus team at Jane Street. And what that means is that I basically help Jane Street think about exactly how we want to approach recruiting in general, whether that be campus recruiting, so going to different universities and hosting events to keep students informed on the new things that we're doing and the different opportunities that we have. I also think about things such as conferences, so which conferences we're going to be attending, who we're going to send to help represent us at those different conferences. So it really kind of, I run the gamut in terms of the things that I'm able to work on here, which is one of my favorite parts of the job, is that it is very creative. We think about things, like I said, just kind of across the scope, and we really try to get creative and think about special ways that we can interact with students as well. I know as an undergrad not too long ago, I remember how many recruiting events I went to, and I remember by the end of it thinking, oh my gosh, all of these information sessions and events and dinners all kind of start looking the same towards the end. So we really try to keep things fun and casual. We're just as a firm, we kind of approach things that way. So we try to bring that same level of energy to our events and student interactions as well. I wanted to start off just by giving, like I said, a brief overview just about Jane Street. I know that when I was in school, I had no idea who Jane Street was until I learned about the opportunity that I'm in right now. And so just to give you a brief overview, so Jane Street is what we call a quantitative trading firm. So what that means is that we trade in the stock market. We trade on all different sorts of exchanges globally, so around the world. Here in New York City, we trade in the New York Stock Exchange. And basically, what we do is we help create and use algorithms to help us trade efficiently in the market. We trade all sorts of different asset classes from commodities, bonds, stocks, ETFs, crypto, anything that you can think of, we probably trade it. And we are what is called a liquidity provider. So we basically help provide movement in the market in order to keep things moving and flowing and keep things efficient so that people like you, individuals, other companies, things like that can continue to participate in the market and to try to minimize as many stalls as we possibly can. So that is called providing liquidity to the stock market. So that is basically our biggest service that we provide to the market, as we like to say. Jane Street is a pretty small firm. I always laugh when I say small firm because just in the time that I have been at Jane Street, which is now for about 3 years, I've seen actually my own personal team, the recruiting team, actually double in size, which is pretty wild to think about. But we have been growing very rapidly, I would say, pretty much starting from the first year before the pandemic up until now, have grown pretty rapidly. And we right now are at about 2,600 employees globally. Jane Street was founded in 2000, so we have not been around for too long, yet we have grown into a pretty sizable company, which is very impressive in my opinion. And we have locations all around the world. So I work out of our US office, which is in New York City. We also have offices in London, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Amsterdam. So like I said, we are everywhere, and we trade in exchanges all around the world. So we pick those locations strategically so that we pretty much during the week are on the clock 24/7. And so a lot of times when we go to bed, another team wakes up and starts that work. So it kind of works pretty seamlessly. In New York City, the office is located in the financial district, which is on the the southernmost point of Manhattan. We are right along the Hudson River, which is pretty lovely, especially in the summertime, to just be able to go out and see the water, even through the windows. We have a lot of just really nice spaces to be able to sit outside in the office, so it gets really nice. Right now, we're kind of in a rainy season in New York, so it's not super enjoyable, but I know in a couple of months it will be. Something else that I like to point out about Jane Street, I know that I would say that quantitative trading has probably grown more in the last 10 or 15 years, or at least it has grown the most in the last 10 or 15 years. And so it's still something that's relatively new in the financial world, as well as the tech world. And I think that's something that we really try to emphasize at Jane Street when we talk to students and young professionals when they're considering a role at Jane Street, is just really emphasizing the importance that we put on technology. We consider ourselves, as much as we consider ourselves a financial services firm, we also consider ourselves a big technology firm. About a third of our employees are technologists, so it is a pretty large portion of our workforce. And these are engineers across all different types of engineering and scopes and things like that. So we really hire anything from software engineers, Linux engineers, FPGA, people for our IT team, people that help build our internal infrastructure to make sure that our computers operate and make sure that our remote setups work. So we really hire all different types of technologists. And like I said, as much as we consider ourselves a financial firm, we also consider ourselves a technology firm. That kind of leads me into the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is our internships and full-time opportunities. So I know that one of the most common questions that I get asked about both our internships and our full-time opportunities is really what the timeline looks like of when you can start thinking about, looking for an internship with us, or if you're in your final year of school, when you should start thinking about looking at full-time opportunities with us. And I would say for full-time, I'll start there because it does tend to be a little bit of a shorter explanation, but our full-time opportunities are pretty unique in that they're open year-round. So they're open 24/7, 365 days a year. Like I said, Jane Street is growing pretty quickly, and so we are constantly reviewing resumes and interviewing and extending full-time offers for people to come work for us full-time. We usually suggest that you start looking at our website, which is where we post all of our open opportunities, sometime in your fall semester of your final year of schooling, whether that be undergraduate, whether you're getting a graduate degree, anything like that. Just in the fall semester of your senior year, just thinking about what you might want to apply to. Like I said, it doesn't matter when you apply because these jobs will never close. And so if you decide to kind of take the bull by the horns, apply during the fall semester of your senior year, great. If you decide, hey, I actually think I want to wait a little bit longer and kind of see what else is out there, that is totally fine. You're welcome to wait until the spring. We've even had people wait until the summer after they've graduated from their program and apply to us. We tend to work pretty fast. The recruiting team is very, very efficient at what they do. A lot of my coworkers that handle a lot of the candidate management processes are very quick. And so you'll probably hear back with us within a week after submitting your application of whether or not you're going to be moving on to the next step. So another piece of advice that we like to give because of the speed of the process is to just make sure that when you apply, that you really feel ready to potentially interview soon after submitting your application. Simply because if you apply and we decide to move you on to the interview stage of the process, it could just be a week or 2 weeks after submitting your resume that you'll hear back from us. So we want to make sure that you are feeling good and strong and confident before going through that process. But other than that, like I said, you are welcome to apply whenever you would like. Additionally, for internships, I would say that our internships do tend to open a little bit early in that we wish that they didn't have to open this early, but unfortunately, just due to the type of industry that we're in, kind of the internship candidate pool gets more and more competitive every year. And so we typically open our internships in July of the summer before you will be interning. For example, in 2024, in July, we'll be opening our internships for the summer of 2025. So you'll have an entire year to be able to apply and think about what you might want to intern in before you send in your application and go through the interview process. Let's see. For the interview process, I know I get usually a lot of questions about what it looks like, how many rounds it is, whether there's any sort of pre-interview assessment that is completed. And the answer is really dependent on the type of role that you're applying for. I would say that our evaluation criteria across all of our positions is pretty standard in that we really try to get to know you as a person during your interview process. So, for example, we don't require any of our candidates to have any sort of background or knowledge in finance in general in order to come to us. There is no need to have taken an econ class or a business class of any sort. Of course, if you have, that's totally fine. But there's absolutely no pressure to know any of that. We will be able to teach you everything that you'll need to know about financial market basics once you get here. So the only thing that we're really testing during the interview process is really your problem solving skills. So how you approach problems, how you think about problems, if you get stuck, are you able to ask for help? Do you know when to ask questions? Are you able to engage in a constructive dialogue with your interviewer as you go through the problem? Things like that. So we're trying to get to know you as if you were one of our coworkers to see how you would be on the desk. So it's really more about how you think. A lot of our interview questions are kind of around these different puzzles and problem-solving exercises. And so, like I said, it's really just about how you approach the problem more so than it is about getting the right answer. In a lot of cases, there's more than one right answer. And so we really just want, like I said, to kind of get to know your thought process a little bit more. In terms of the number of rounds and the timeline, it really, like I said, depends on the type of role that you're applying for. I would say that our dev internship, so for software engineering, tends to have the least number of rounds. So the first round will be a coding challenge where you will go through a coding problem with your interviewer. So it's a collaborative exercise. And then you will move on to what is called an on-site, which at other places may also be called a super day. It's basically a day where we fly you out to New York City or bring you to New York City if you are local. We bring you to our office and you will basically go through several smaller interviews throughout the course of the day. And so we can kind of give you little snippets of, things that we are trying to evaluate you on, different skill sets, things like that. You'll meet different engineers and different interviewers throughout the course of the day. It's also just a time for you to get to know our office a little bit better, get to know more people in the Jane Street community and things like that. And from there, I would say that on the other end of the spectrum is our trading process. So trading, I would say, tends to have the most number of interviews and will usually take the longest amount of time to get through that process. And that will be anywhere between 3 to 4 rounds. So if we get to the end of round 3 and we say, hey, we actually still want to get to know this person a little bit more before we can come to a decision, then we might ask you to go through an additional round towards the middle or towards the end. But that does tend to be a little bit of a longer process. So it'll be 3 different problem-solving interviews before you get to your final one, which would be the on-site, which would be pretty much identical to what I explained about the on-site and the dev internship, where we bring you to our office and you'll go through a series of smaller interviews throughout the day. Another question that I typically get asked as well is, what kind of different roles do we have and what candidate backgrounds typically fit into these roles? I know a lot of people, I know that I studied several things at once in college, and I know that that has become more common now. And so a lot of people just tend to ask me, with my background, what role would you suggest that I apply for and things like that? I would say that our 3, what we like to call kind of our bread and butter roles, are software engineering, quantitative trading, and quantitative research. So the way that I kind of like to explain these 3 roles and kind of how they relate to each other is we like to think of these 3 roles as being on somewhat of a spectrum where we have software engineering on one end, trading on the other, and quantitative research that sits somewhere in the middle of kind of this continuous spectrum. So our software engineering side tends to be what you probably imagine it is. It tends to be pretty traditional computer scientists, so people that may have studied some type of engineering or computer science in college, or maybe have a graduate degree in that space, and they spend a lot of their time on the desk coding or reviewing code or thinking of different things that we could be implementing on the desk and things like that. On the other end of the spectrum, like I mentioned, is quantitative trading. So this one differs a little bit in that these people they tend to be a little bit more, we like to call them a little bit more mathy. So people that may have studied pure math in college, or maybe they studied physics, something that's a little bit more quantitative reasoning based. And our quantitative traders are the ones that actually, for lack of a better word, kind of push the buttons and actually execute the trades on a daily basis. And so they are the ones that are going to be paying attention to the market, paying attention to when it opens, when it closes, when there are different events that are occurring that affect the market, things like that. So those are our quantitative traders. And our quantitative researchers, like I mentioned, kind of sit somewhere in between these 2 roles. So these are people that have both the coding and programming skills that a software engineer would have, in addition to having the math and quantitative reasoning skills that a quantitative trader would have. And so this will also be reflected in the interview processes for these roles. So for example, the quantitative researcher, because we are evaluating for both skill sets, will go through some interviews that a dev would go through, as well as some interviews that a trader would go through. And in addition, the trader would go through primarily math kind of problem solving interviews, while the dev would go through coding challenge interviews. I think something that I do like to mention is that although we have what we call kind of a typical profile for these roles, these certainly are not boxes that you kind of need to fit into. We have people across the firm that have studied all different sorts of things in college before they came to us and are now in one of these 3 roles. I, as well, did not study anything related to recruiting or HR or any sort of um, related topic in college. I actually was a Spanish major, and now I work in HR at Jane Street. So it's a really open place in that we really value kind of how people's brains work more so than what they study. And so we really bring on people with all sorts of different experiences, different majors, different backgrounds from different places around the world. We don't, only hire from specific schools. We don't target specific schools. We're really open to talking to any type of candidate that may be interested in working with us. So certainly I say that because after mentioning these things, I certainly don't want to scare anybody off. If you're thinking, oh man, I really want to apply to be a dev, but I'm not a CS major, that is not a problem. You're still more than welcome to apply to that role if it's of interest to you. Something that I do like to mention about that part of the application process as well is that when we evaluate candidates, we are evaluating you not just for the role that you initially applied to, but for anything that we have available. So I know a common question that I get asked when I go to campus a lot is, if I'm interested in more than one role, should I apply to more than one role? And I always say, if you're interested in one or two, please go ahead and apply to both. That's certainly totally fine with us. I would say that the biggest piece of advice, however, that I have is that we just hope that you don't apply to everything that we have on our website. First, because that is certainly a lot of time that is being consumed on your end. But additionally, if you apply to everything, it then becomes hard for us to really kind of discern exactly what it is that is of interest to you and what you think that you would be good at or where your strengths lie. And so rest assured that if you apply to one thing, you're being considered for everything. So for example, if you originally applied to be a software engineer and we take a look at your profile and your resume and we think, hey, this person might actually be better suited for trading or research or another role, we would actually just go ahead and move you over to that process and let you know that that's happening. And if that other role is something that is still of interest to you, then we will go ahead and move forward with that. So certainly don't become too stressed out about applying for the right role. We are trying, when we see you, we are trying to find, where would be the best fit for you. And so we will do a lot of that work on the back end as well. Something else that I really like to mention is really just this idea of flexibility and mobility at Jane Street. It starts during the interview process and really carries on through your entire career here. So just because you start in one thing doesn't mean that you have to stay there forever. We certainly don't want you, like I said, to be kind of sitting in this box. We want you to be able to explore things and, find out things about yourself, learn new things, be curious about things. And so we really encourage that level of curiosity. Like I said, even starting through the interview process, we have certainly had people that have, for example, started in the software engineering process. And as they've kind of gone through it, and we on the employer side have started to get to know you a little bit better and gotten a better sense for your skills, we have said, hey, you actually might be better suited for the trading position. Do you want to go ahead and move over to that process instead? And so, somebody that may have started in the dev process may finish it in the trading process and might get an offer to be a trading intern, and vice versa. It happens, starting in trading, going over to dev. So there is certainly a level of flexibility even after the application review process. So there is certainly lots of time for you to kind of move around and make sure that we find the right fit for you, even if it's not, right away. It can certainly happen later on. So definitely don't feel too stressed or too much pressure to kind of start in the right place. Something that kind of comes along with this, like I said, with this curiosity and this kind of encouragement to learn more and, discover new things and things like that, is really kind of our mentorship and learning pillar that we have here at Jane Street. Mentorship and kind of education is something that we really, really stress, not just for our interns, but for full-timers as well. So we really believe that learning is a career-long process here at Jane Street. So we really believe that everybody is always going to be a student, no matter how long you've been here, because there's always something new to learn, always something new to try. So this starts just kind of at the beginning during the internship process. You go through a team matching process once you've received an offer, and you're actually matched with 2 or more mentors that will kind of help guide you through the summer process. We'll help guide you through your internship projects, and really answer any questions that you have about the work, about the job, about what it's like to work at Jane Street, whether it is that you're not sure if you want to work here or somewhere else, or maybe you're not sure that you want to work in quant finance in general. That is certainly somebody that's going to help kind of guide you through that process and help you make that decision. During the internship process, you'll also have a lot of different kind of ad hoc educational sessions and tutorials throughout the summer. We have what is called an OCaml boot camp. OCaml is the functional programming language that our engineers use here at Jane Street. It is not a very common language, and so we certainly don't expect you to know what it is or even have heard of it before you come to us. During the interview process, you are welcome to code in whatever language feels comfortable for you. But because it is the primary language that we use here, once you come to us as an intern, or if you're coming to us straight as a full-timer, we put you through this boot camp, which is basically a 4 to 6 week crash course into how to use the language, why we use it, why we think it's important, how it kind of feeds into our larger projects and work here at the firm. And so that's really a big portion of that kind of educational aspect in that first year, is making sure that you're feeling good about using something new if you've never used it before. Kind of in the same way that these interns will have these classes throughout the summer, once you're a full-timer, your first year is also actually full of lectures and classes. So this can be anything that is team specific. So traders might have different classes and lectures about events happening in the market or some sort of market movement that's happening, different strategies that they want to implement, things like that. Devs might work on different coding skills or different projects that they think might be interesting to start implementing. And like I said, this happens throughout your entire first year at Jane Street. After that, it then becomes more of kind of an optional experience, although I would say that most people at Jane Street tend to opt into these opportunities. So for example, on the recruiting side, I know a lot about kind of who we are and what it is that we do, but I'm certainly not, as equipped as an engineer or a trader to talk about, for example, the technical aspects of the work, because I'm not sitting on the trading desk every day. I'm not coding. I have never coded. I've never taken a CS class. And so sometimes there will be an opportunity for us to take a crash course into what the devs are doing these days, or learn about different terminology in the trading world. And so these will kind of be like hour-long sessions that will happen after the workday in our auditorium. And so a lot of times we'll go down there and I'll just kind of go down and learn something new. And I feel like that helps kind of better equip me for my job as well when I go to campus and explain different things. And so they're really free and open to anybody. And I would say that a lot of people take advantage of these sort of lectures. And so, like I said, the educational aspect certainly continues throughout your career in Jane Street, even after that first year of those kind of mandatory sessions. I would say that the learning and guidance really never stops, no matter how long you've been here. So like I said, education really is just a big part of how we make sure that we stay innovative and start thinking of new ideas. We're always wanting to try new things and learn things through trial and error. Something else that I really like to mention is that we're really blessed that we have a very high retention rate here at Jane Street. So a lot of people start and finish their careers here. Just even in the last 3 years that I have been here, I have seen several people retire that have been with Jane Street since the year 2000. They've been here for 25 years, many of them for their entire career, and have just now decided to retire. And so because we have people that have been here for a really long time, that also adds this really unique aspect to kind of the mentorship and educational kind of activities and guidance, in that we have people that have been here for so long that they are very seasoned in what they do. They're able to offer very unique advice and, help you think of different strategies and different ideas in different ways. I'm sure that I would probably offer different advice to a colleague than my colleague that has been here for 10 years, for example, simply because they have more experience, they've seen more things, they've worked on more things. And so it's really unique in that we have a lot of people that have been in this industry for a very long time. And so it just really adds to kind of that learning component in a very special way. I think something else that I really like to mention, and I know that something else that I loved to ask when I was an undergrad, and speaking with employers, and something that I get asked now on this side is, what is your favorite part about Jane Street? And in addition to kind of this learning aspect, it's really just the greater culture here. I would say that one of the biggest things that we really emphasize and that we really try to put into practice every single day is this idea of collaboration and working with different teams and working alongside your teammates, and really thinking of it as a team. We are all working towards one greater goal, which is to make Jane Street, as innovative and as exciting as possible. And so, that really starts with just wanting to hire very curious people that are always trying to dig deeper and think really critically and in different ways about different problems. But once you're here as well, is just making sure that that open line of communication in your team is as strong and as open as possible. And so I've seen that just in my last 3 years here, from the first day that I arrived until now, even 3 years later, where I, fingers crossed, hope that I have a little bit more, some more skills in my toolbox and different tools in my toolbox and things like that. I am constantly asking people around me for advice on how to approach things, bouncing ideas off of people, asking for help. Something that I really appreciate about Jane Street, that I really like to emphasize as well, is that we really emphasize this idea of being open to making mistakes. I have certainly had times where I have had to raise my hand to my manager and say, hey, I made a mistake. I really messed up. I need help. I'm not sure how to go about this. And I've never been met with any sort of punishment or any sort of shame or anything. It's always, all right, cool, let's figure it out. Let's figure out what we can do differently for next time. If it is something that would be valuable for the rest of the team to know, we should really shout it so that people know and realize, hey, they tried this, it didn't work, we probably shouldn't try it either, and things like that. So this openness to making mistakes, I think, also really helps with, one, this learning aspect, but two, also just being able to grow as a person. Being able to not be afraid to try something new or throw something out there, and if it sticks, then great, and if it doesn't, okay, well, you learned and now you're able to kind of cross that off that list. So the ability to do that, I think, is something that I really value about working here, and I think something that we really find important. I think something else that I have also been really surprised by is kind of this flexibility and mobility that I mentioned a little bit earlier on in this talk. And that really starts as well with just something as simple as our job titles. So if you go to our website and you look at our different opportunities, you'll see that a lot of our job titles are very generic. So for example, we will hire software engineer. And so it's not a very specific title. And we do that for a reason. It's because we really want people to have this room to grow and to be curious and to move around if they would like to. I have actually had some movement in my own personal career, even in the last 3 years at Jane Street. And so when I first started, I was part of our university campus recruiting team, which is the team that you would typically think of that goes to college campuses and thinks about events and different kind of things that we host on campus and things like that. And now I work on something that's a little bit different, that's a little bit more focused on our diversity partners, a little bit more focused on our pre-college initiatives. So getting people more acquainted with FinTech and Jane Street in general before they even go to college. And so if this is something that is of interest to them when they go to college, they're able to make some more informed decisions on what they would like to study, or maybe a career that they're interested in pursuing after they graduate. So like I said, I have personally had some movement and it was pretty seamless. It really started with me speaking with my manager and saying, hey, I actually have been really interested in this other side of things. I'm really interested in trying it. The work that we've done already has been, very intriguing to me, and I think it'd be really fulfilling. And it was a pretty seamless switch. in that, my manager was like, that sounds great. We'll start putting you on some more of these projects and kind of get you in communication with that team. And now I work primarily with the team that I was interested in to begin with. So it works out pretty well. And it is very easy to do. So there's definitely a lot of flexibility. Something else that I like to mention as well is that although I work in the New York City office, we really do think about ourselves as being very much a global firm. So as I mentioned before, we have offices all around the world, everywhere from London to Hong Kong, Singapore, a small office in Amsterdam. And we really kind of think of ourselves as operating as one big unit. So it's not the New York office and the Hong Kong office, it's just Jane Street. And we really put this into practice every single day. So, for example, I have counterparts in pretty much all of these offices. So there's a campus strategy team in all of these offices, and I communicate with them pretty much daily. So the team in Hong Kong, the team in London, the team in Singapore, and we really kind of just check in with each other, talk through ideas, talk about things that we've executed in our regions of the world, things that we've tried and that have worked, things that we've tried and that haven't worked. And so it's really interesting to just kind of learn how other things function in other parts of the world, and also just to kind of get new ideas. They have, certainly done things that I never would have thought of trying. And, we tried executing in the US and it was a huge success. And so it's definitely just another way for us to kind of collaborate and kind of talk with other people and work through ideas that way. There's also a lot of opportunity to visit these offices. So, for example, actually last year at the end of the summer, I spent a couple of weeks in Europe visiting our London office, and I got to be a little bit more acquainted with how we participate in our partnerships with different Olympiads around the world. And so I sat with the strategy team in London, talked with them about their work, things that they're doing, things that they might need help on, or things that I'm working on that I could use a different perspective on, and things like that. So there's certainly also time to actually go and visit these offices, which I think is a pretty cool part of the deal, being able to travel to other places and kind of learn how things function there. The last thing that I want to talk about before I get to your questions, because I know I said I would leave a chunk of time for those, is just this another way for students to be able to get to know us and learn a little bit more about us, even if you're not interested or feel like you're ready to apply for an internship just yet. And that is something called our in-house programs. So we have several in-house programs. We have about a dozen. And these run throughout the calendar year, and they are for all different age groups and identity groups and things like that. Some of them are pretty short. They're a day or a couple of days, and some of them are longer. So I actually help run one of our in-house programs that's a little bit on the longer end, which is called the Academy of Math and Programming, and that one is 5 weeks. For all of these programs, Jane Street will fly you to New York City or London or Hong Kong. So depending on where you're completing the program, we do run them globally. And we will get you into our office and we'll basically give you a crash course into whatever it is that you're wanting to learn about. So some of these programs have specific tracks that you can apply to. So if you're interested in learning more about trading, you can apply to the trading specific track. If you're interested in learning about more SWE things, you'll apply to the dev and the SWE track. A lot of them also have our SP track, which is strategy and product. This used to be called business development, if any of you had heard of that one before. So if that is something that is of interest to you, you can apply to that track. So there are a lot of different ways for you to get to know more about the firm, as well as a specific area of expertise if there is something that is particularly intriguing to you. So there are, like I said, lots of different ways to get to know us and interact with us before you even come to work at Jane Street or intern with us. So we have several opportunities for every type of student at any point in your academic career. Whether you're an undergrad or a graduate student, we are on campus pretty much year round. We're right now kind of in the heat of our spring recruiting season. And so we are on campus, I would say several times a week at different campuses around the country. just kind of getting to know students, giving them a little bit more information about who we are and different opportunities that we offer. So there are definitely several different touch points that you can have with us to ask us questions or anything like that. But I know we only have about a 15 minutes left, so I will stop there. And if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat.
Okay. Thank you, Marina. This is great. In the chat, I also posted links. So I posted links to your website in general, but opportunities at Jane Street. And then I also went under the students and new grads opportunities.
Fantastic.
So that's in the chat. And we'll summarize that because we'll have a follow-up article and put those
Fantastic.
in there. And this was really great. So I have a few questions, and let me just see, because I thought it was really exciting what you were talking about, and with Jane Street, because
Yeah.
I was a student, maybe just maybe a little more than a few years ago, but but one question, like for example, are there still opportunities for this summer, if
Mhm.
possible? So even though it's almost April, because you hear about the exciting things going on at Jane Street, can students still apply now?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So I would say that most of our internships for summer of 2024 have closed. So something that I apologize that I forgot to mention earlier is kind of when these internships typically close in the year after we start accepting applications. So we actually, for all of our internship positions, will recruit on a rolling basis until our internship classes are full. And so there is no concrete deadline of, on October 31st, we're going to close our internship. That's not typically how we tend to manage these things. We will keep reviewing candidates as they come along until we have filled a class. Typically, our dev internship tends to close sometime around Halloween or early November. That tends to be kind of one of our more popular positions. And so we tend to have a pretty big surge of applications come through at the beginning of the school year. I would say that our next internships to close would be research and SP, which is our strategy and product position that I mentioned. That one will close sometime at the beginning of the new year. So I believe we closed that one sometime around January this year. And then our trading internship is typically the last one to close, and that can close really anytime in the middle of this spring session. That one, the reason that we're able to keep it open for so long is because we admit the biggest internship class for our trading program. And so we're just able to accept the most amount of people to come and spend the summer with us. So I would say that for internships for 2024, we have closed most of them. I will say, though, that several of our in-house programs that we run do run over the summer, and several of them have just opened their applications. So if you go to our website and there's a page called Our Programs and Events. There you'll find a whole list of every single in-house program that we run throughout the year. And any that are currently accepting applications will have a little banner that says applications open. And so I know that I'm not sure if it was yesterday or today, we recently just opened applications for several of those programs. So in-house programs are definitely a great way to get involved with us if you're still looking for an opportunity for this upcoming summer.
Okay, and I'm going to post in the chat the link for our programs and events.
Perfect.
Okay, so that'll be great. So as you've been talking, I've been on your website. Well, I was on it before, but now it's
Our website is very informative. I always say that the website's going to take my job away because everything that I
no,
know
I don't
is
think.
on there. So
Marina, your excitement and your description about what you do, they could never, ever take the
I
job away.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, even generative AI can't do the same.
Fingers crossed.
And we're starting to get uh, some questions here, and I'll just because they're in the question and answer chat, I'll mention them. But it's from Tushar Singh. During which month does Jane Street hire the most? And
Yeah.
yes.
So that's a great question. I would say that it differs between internships and full-time, simply because our full-time opportunities are open year-round. And so I'd say we typically see a bit of a bigger surge in the fall, just because that is kind of the traditional time period in which upcoming grads are starting to look for jobs. But we certainly make a large number of hires in the spring season for full-time roles as well. And I would say for internships, we do most of our hiring in the fall season, simply because one, the students that we work with are very great and are very diligent about sending their applications in pretty early on. But like I said, because we do kind of operate on this rolling basis, um, and we kind of review candidates and conduct interviews as they come along. I would say that our fall season tends to be our heaviest recruiting season in terms of actually making intern hires. And so I would say probably anywhere between like August and November is probably the heaviest time of the year.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then, so here's we're getting more questions in here. So I was looking at the program page and I wanted to ask if the In Focus program will be opening up or if the opportunity will be closed for this academic year.
That is a great question. So our In Focus program for 2024 has already passed, unfortunately. So we actually ran that program a couple of months ago. And so that one will happen again next in the beginning of the new year in 2025. And so I would say sometime in the fall, we will open applications for that one, and you can go ahead and apply directly on that same page that you're on the programs page is where you'll see the application. And so it will happen, like I said, in the first few months of 2025.
Okay. And so that was from Sean Stern. And now we have Tushar Singh. Which month does the hiring start for new grad roles? For example, with the software engineering or trader roles?
That is a great question. So like I said before, we don't really have a start month of when we start hiring for these roles because they are open 12 months out of the year. So I would say that, like I mentioned, our typical kind of surge of when we get a pretty large number of applications does tend to be somewhere in the fall semester of people's last year of schooling. Just because that does tend to be kind of the traditional time in which people start looking for full-time opportunities. But as I mentioned, if you are not ready to apply to us in the fall just yet, that's no problem, and there's certainly no rush. The position will continue to be open, and so if you feel kind of better equipped in the spring or even the summer after you've graduated to apply for a full-time position, we are still more than happy to accept your application and review your candidacy.
Okay. And do you hire part-time? Like, can a person work with Jane Street while in school?
Unfortunately, no, we only hire for full-time positions at this time.
Okay. And even the internships are for full-time during that period of time.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, full-time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So sorry I jumped in with my
No,
question.
no problem.
Okay. Another question from Vanessa Azay. Is Jane Street internship favorable for freshmen with little experience, or do they have, internships targeted, do you have internships that are targeted to freshmen and sophomore?
That is a great question. So typically, I will start by saying that we do not have any sort of age or grade requirement for any of our internships. And so even if you are a first year, or a second year, you are more than welcome to apply for an internship if it is of interest to you. But in the sake of full transparency, I will say that a majority of our internship classes are made up of second and third year students. And that's really because we've noticed that um, students tend to do a little bit better in the program and learn a little bit more once they've had some more coursework under their belt. And so once you've kind of finished up that second year of schooling is really kind of the sweet spot in which students really just kind of take off in our internship program and really are able to get the most out of it. But like I said, we don't have an age requirement. And so if you are in your first year, you're more than welcome to apply. But I always just like to add that tidbit in for students, just so that you know that we do tend to lean towards second and third year students when we make those when we make those hires for the internship. I will say that a lot of our in-house programs are a great way to kind of start that interaction with us before you decide to apply for an internship. And I'm thinking about one of our programs specifically, which is called FTTP, which is our first year trading and technology program. And so we actually just finished running it in New York City, and we actually also just finished running it in our London office as well. But this is basically a week-long program where we fly students out to our office, whether it be in New York City or in London, depending on the iteration of the program that you've applied for. And we basically kind of give you a crash course into trading or dev at Jane Street. So you're able to pick the track that you're most interested in, whether you're wanting to learn more about the trading side of things or whether you're wanting to learn more about the dev side of things. And you're able to interact with full-timers and learn from them, learn about the work. And so when it does come time for you to apply to an internship, you'll have a better idea of kind of which side of the work you're most interested in. But I would say that the first year is definitely a great year for you to start becoming engaged with us in our programs. And then later on, you're able to apply for an internship.
Okay. And this is great. So yeah, we're all looking at your website with the
Fantastic.
various links. Um, but I'll ask, I know we're 4 minutes left. So I'm going to try to get in two questions if I can. There's
Yeah,
more, but I'll just get in two. Okay. So, because I think a lot of people have this, what is the best way for an applicant to stand apart, such that they get that interview? So
absolutely. Um,
everyone wants to know.
I know the golden question. The golden question. This was
It
my
is.
golden question when I was an undergrad as well. So I don't blame y'all for asking. Um, I think something that, especially now that I've been on the recruiting side and done resume reviews myself, I think something that really makes people stand out to me is that after working here for a few years, something that I've really noticed about our employees is that not only are they very skilled and good at what they do, but they have such an natural and innate passion for what they do. They just really enjoy the problems that they're solving and the different types of systems that they're working on and things like that. And so I love when candidates are able to kind of show me that passion and that interest and that drive for their subject matter through their resume and their application. And so ways they are able to show me that is that not only are you excelling in your coursework and the classes and the major that you've decided to focus on in your schooling career, but also that with the things you're doing outside of school, whether that be research opportunities, maybe you're working with a professor on something, on a publication or a research project. Maybe you're doing different types of clubs or leaders of organizations that are related to your subject matter. It could be a personal project that you're working on that you're really excited about. I always get so excited when I have students come up to me at career fairs and tell me about something that they've been doing in their off time that they're just really passionate about and they just can't wait until it's finalized and ready for use. And so, really, anything they were able to show us, nothing is too small. I always tell people if it is something that matters to you, put it on your resume. There is, of course, only so much that I can learn about you from a piece of paper. And so I really want to learn, the really unique and special things that make you who you are. And so if it's something that matters to you, if it's something that you spend a lot of time on and that you genuinely enjoy, put it on there. It can be anything, like I said, projects, activities, organizations, leadership positions, maybe competitions or different sorts of events that you participate in. Anything of the sort is really valuable for us to know. So definitely include those types of things.
Yes, so this is great information. Then a last quick question so I can get into two,
Yeah.
and that is, do you offer co-op? So it's not where you can do part-time, but maybe where you're, work a semester and then take classes and alternate. So do you have co-op as well?
Yes, so we actually do have a co-op program here at Jane Street. I know that we work off the top of my head, I can think of a couple of schools that specifically design their school year in order for students to participate in a co-op
Right.
opportunity. And so if you go to a school that offers that opportunity, then you're more than welcome to apply to our winter co-op. However, we unfortunately, like I mentioned before, don't allow people to work for us part-time. And so if that is not part of your program, and you're looking for a part-time position, we unfortunately are unable to accommodate that. But if you're in a specific co-op program, then you're absolutely welcome to apply to the opportunities that we have in those off seasons.
Right. So let me just say, because we're right at the top of the hour, that this was fantastic. Thank you
Lovely.
so
Of
much, Maria.
course.
And I'm just thinking we may have another one if you don't mind, because
Yeah,
there are
that would be great.
questions that came up that we didn't get a chance to answer, and great excitement here. So I think we may do a Jane Street part two. Uh,
Fantastic.
yes, because I have a whole bunch of questions too. So but I want to stick to the hour and recognize everybody's time. But this was really exciting. So I want to thank you and give a round of applause. It was great. So this is wonderful. And we're going to send a blurb in our next newsletter that
Fantastic.
will go out the beginning of next month. And we'll include links, but we'll send it to you for review. But I think all of this, like for example, all the events that you have on your website is just great. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you all so much for having me. This has been an absolute pleasure. I always get very excited to talk about how much I love working here. So it's also really fun for me. And as well, I'm going to put in the chat our recruiting team email. So I know that some folks have some questions that we didn't get to today. And so if there's anything that you're wondering about, whether it be a general question or something specific to your application process, please don't hesitate to reach out. Jobs@janestreet.com is the email that will lead you directly to our recruiters. And so any questions that you have, you're welcome to shoot them there.
Okay, so I'm putting in here jobs@janestreet.com.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Wonderful.
Perfect.
Yes. Thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll be in touch for part two.
Sounds great. Thank you all so much.